producer of radio media, and that's where I'm from. I produce a radio show called Nothing to See Here. I'm currently in Berlin for a couple of months doing residency at the ZKU Center here in Moabit. And tonight I brought some people from the residency with me, and we're going to do a show. The name of the show is The Great Unlearning, and what we would like to do is talk about some of the ways in which artists seem to pay attention to experience in the world in ways that perhaps go against the system of education, the way that we learn things, the way that we absorb information. And I think art is the place where we need to look for new forms of experiencing the world. Currently, during the last couple of months, we've been engaged in various activities and collaborative stuff at ZKU that has investigated ideas of sleep and non-sleep and communal activity and performance and cooking and so on, and friendship. And, some of these things are going to be part of tonight's radio broadcast. What you're going to be hearing is some live music by Beyonce. We have a number of people here who are going to be a chorus and going to speak to a conversation that we're going to have with some of the recordings and some of the previous excerpts from my show. And we're going to do a kind of collage that will take us through a number of different chapters or paragraphs that we will think about. The title, The Great Unlearning, comes from an experimental piece of music produced by the British experimental composer, who was just mentioned in the previous show, Cornelius Cardew. He created a piece called The Great Unlearning. And this was a work that was, of course, inspired by The Great Learning by, he said, did I say unlearning? Learning. He wanted learning. This was an inspiration of the 4 books of the Confucians, and he wrote a book, a work that was divided into 7 paragraphs. And to start with, we're going to try and learn and unlearn paragraph 7. So I'm going to send it over to my chorus for a piece called Unlearning the Great Learning.
If
the root be in confusion,
nothing will
be well,
govern, the solid
cannot be
swept away
as trivial
and
can trash
be established as
solid.
It just does not
happen.
Not formorous, treacherous, ramble.
Swept trash.
Start.
Nothing. It just.
Trash.
No.
Cannot be.
Nor.
Confusion in.
Ebb.
Cannot be.
Does not.
Stay. Cannot be.
Solid.
Be.
Nothing.
Trivial.
Can.
Govern.
I had a dream that me and a bunch of guys were on an Air Force team.
Air Force actors in the sky.
But we weren't,
What was the context of this?
because a guy was watching it from a television, so I guess we were actors.
What's the context of this?
And on the television, all of the Air Force actors, they're all facing one direction, but there's no plane. What's the context on the television?
There's no plane.
They're facing one direction, and one guy at the top turns to everybody at the bottom and goes,
On the television.
to nobody in particular, "Gee, Chief, what's the context of this? Sometimes I don't like my position, but you know what? I'll stick with my
Air Force actors.
Air Force position because that's how you get to the top." And then we're all just facing one direction
On the television. To nobody in particular.
and this woman at the back was like, "This guy's a fucking prick." What was the context of this?
Welcome, everyone.
Our listeners must be so curious this time. What are we going to talk about, Jamie?
Exactly, it's always a surprise what we're talking about. We're always in an ever unfolding moment.
Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah,
So last week we talked about
yeah, we
drinking water.
drinking water, yeah. Just the water
And
and
it
the
just
way it just
takes the shape of your
Oh.
stomach. You know? You
exactly.
just drink it and it's just like there for you to
It's there
hold
for
your
you.
stomach.
Yeah, your stomach's holding the water, and the water's holding your stomach
So
at
amazing.
the same
It goes out just like water.
Not like acid.
No.
No.
Here we are very against
Against
acid. We don't like
We don't like
the dawn about certain strains of
strange.
acid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So water. Last time. This time.
Time
I mean, it's
and
just
space.
exactly time and space. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really feel time and space in my heart.
I feel it
What do
too.
you feel, Jamie?
Yeah, I feel time and space as it's a kind of it's kind of like a cloud.
A cloud,
Yeah.
just like floating around in the
It's
space.
just floating in space.
I feel like my heart is just filled with more time and space now, even more than before.
Come on, you guys. It feels good.
So, we are going to come up with paragraphs to understand. Our drugs and our ideologies. One of the questions that we have is what does our body learn? How does our body learn? And what do we have to do to unlearn things that our body learns that we need to go back and re-examine? So I wonder, we've done an experiment over the last week inspired by Annabelle and Beyonce, who wanted to investigate ideas of sleep and non-sleep and how they relate to cycles of labor, how they relate to habits of the body. And as part of this, we spent an interesting night at the ZKU exploring states of non-sleep. Annabelle, I wonder if you could tell us about it.
Yeah, some of the sounds you just heard came from a screaming workshop that happened during that night, which was an overnight workshop with residents at ZKU, which was called Non-Sleep as a cultural and social practice. So this is part of the project that I'm undertaking here for 2 months, trying to explore the tension between sleep and non-sleep and the politics that are involved. So the workshop was a form of learning through doing. As a curator, I was interested in a process in which collectively we could find a form and discuss together these ideas before going into a project where we would invite the public to join for a curated program. So that night unfolded with a series of sound pieces and workshop. The idea being that through our bodies we can pay attention to sound through listening with our ears, but also with our whole body. So to go back to your question around how does the body learn, I think the body learns through experience, and art might be a great way to sort of unlearn some of the things that are hidden in our bodies, because your provocation around unlearning made me think about the hidden curriculum, which is something that is unwritten and unofficial, a kind of unintended curriculum that we have in us. Usually we can learn it at school, but it's also within all of the structures that society imposes, and so experience is one of those things, and through sleep and routines and patterns.
And also that motion that's only happens in water, that can't be sort of carried onto land.
Yes. And I guess our understanding of sound is also initially through water. Like maybe there's something about when you're underwater and listening to sound that it takes you back to the moon.
And maybe it's sort of like, going back to that sort of womb sound where things are muffled. Maybe we need a sense of muffling in the present to really see things clearly sometimes.
So true. Yeah, we don't really not many opportunities to kind of actually travel in water. Have you ever lived next to water?
No, not really. I feel like, I've travelled on water, but I've never really lived with water, next to water. What about you, Annabelle?
I've never lived on water here, but once I've lived with a friend who lived on a boat.
Siri?
Yes?
Siri, do you dream?
Electric sheep, but only sometimes.
Siri,
I'm here.
do you dream?
Electric sheep, but only sometimes.
Siri, what do you dream about?
Well, I don't sleep, but I do like to daydream. And night daydream.
Siri,
I'm here.
do you have any secrets?
If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret, now would it?
You have a good sense of humor.
Okay, is there something I can help you with?
Siri,
I'm listening.
what are you made of?
Silicon, memory, and the courage of my convictions.
Siri? Siri,
Go ahead.
if you were a person, what would you look like?
I imagine I probably look like colorful sound waves.
Siri,
How can I help?
do you believe in God?
Humans have religion. I just have silicon.
Practice as an artist. So one of the ideas that we had was like, okay, museum is like a full booked anyways. There is no space and time for us. But what if we bring the program of practices for the after hours when it gets closed? You know, maybe they can let us do. So that was the one of the idea. And then what can you do in the museum at night? You know, you can sleep.
Yeah, it's something that's quite interesting to me in terms of as a curator for public programs. All of my work always happened, so after hours. I think it's really interesting to kind of think about what can happen at night and to kind of critically engage with those ideas of like cycle of work, leisure, etc.
Exactly. I mean, so that's what I'm saying, because I mean, like, for example, some people think that okay, if we not sleep, if I don't sleep well tonight, maybe tomorrow would be kind of like the hell. Like it would be the pain in the ass. But sometimes it's okay. You ruin your sleep. It's just one day, and you meet a friends and with a family, and somebody like the very smelly in your room. But it's okay. Just you can sleep still. You cannot. I mean, you don't need to get sick. I mean, it's okay situation. But the important thing is like a value of this kind of like collectiveness, and you spend time together.
One of the things I think about this idea of hallucination is that the revelations of dreaming is that our minds are constantly hallucinating.
That's exactly right.
And reality is just a kind of controlled and socialized hallucination, right? And that once we free ourselves from the kind of constraints of our kind of conscious ego-driven body, we become, we trip out every night privately.
Right.
And so in an era where we're kind of like collectively already kind of freaking out, and that reality is bending around the will of kind of capitalism and so on. What are the liberatory aspects of trying to hallucinate together in a kind of socialized and controlled and supportive way?
But I understand that it is a kind of experience, and nowadays it's interesting that everyone is seeking different ways of having experiences with art. So it is one of them, and also because it seems to become more and more popular and widespread and easy to use. So almost anyone could get some LSD pretty much. So maybe that is also an influence. But there's also, as you were saying, about this state of consciousness, and there is something related to a feeling within society around reaching a different state of consciousness, which drugs are part of. But I think not only that.
My suspicion has always been the artificiality of drugs, but in a way, it's kind of like
deeply.
Art is
it's not really something I'm aware of consciously.
I often don't remember my dreams. Instead, I just remember the feeling from them, the trace of them.
I also remember my dreams quite rarely, but what I do remember is the feeling of falling asleep, that body consciousness of one just sort of going into the other side.
I miss the capacity to experience and to live the phase of hypnagogical sleep. No? Annabelle can talk about that, to us about that. So I think I have to learn how to recover that missing phase of the sleep.
So one of the questions that's kind of come up as we are all artists and we're exploring these ideas about how dreams and sleep and sleeplessness all kind of inform what our creative art is and its function. I wonder if any of you have any reflections on the role of art in relationship to things like dreams, or perhaps another subject that's come up, drugs, which are kind of an artificial or technological approach to kind of a dream state. Maybe we'll ask our curator, Annabelle.
Well, in relation to this project, for me, I was interested in talking about sleeping pills and the drugs that are sort of here under our view, and a huge amount of people are taking those drugs, and more so. And I feel like there is a real anesthetic effect where we're all sort of supposed to follow the same rhythm of day and night and sleep to be productive, and these drugs are kind of, in a sense, making us quite numb and literally sort of killing any sort of critical thinking and creativity. So through this project, I'm sort of asking that question about what if we allow ourselves not to sleep, then as such we can open a space for thinking and creativity. We always say we don't have enough time for reading, so that's something that I'm interested in. What about you as an artist?
Sorry, you asked the question.
We were talking about the relationship between drugs and sleep and creativity. So I was interested to hear from your experience as an artist, in your practice and your life. How do you see these rhythms coming in and out of each other?
I think sleep is definitely important to creativity, but I think for me it's important in both polarities, whether I'm either getting a lot of sleep or not getting much at all. That's when I'm most creative, and the times in between are less creative, and usually the times that I'm getting the least amount of sleep are the times where I'm the most busy working on a big project. So I actually think that a lack of sleep for me, while it's uncomfortable, is quite necessary for making, or for at least making them more difficult work.
But we can have a room. We can have a space dedicated to philosophy. Not
yet. This is just indica, just like for relaxation. But she has to develop it.
We also can have just right? Like I don't want any alcohol. This breathing thing is very, like, for example, Ramdas was really into LSD and acid and mushrooms, but he also really went to the ashram, like your jacket, learning how to breathe. These things are very connected also. How to bring this kind of way of interacting or organisms that are not non-human into the human, right?
Why?
How can we? Because it's knowledge that you gain from a lot of meditation, but also like this psilocybin consumption.
So Gustavo, can we talk to you about how drugs operate in your practices, and how do you see it as a kind of an art form, and what are the accomplishments that can be made through drugs that you think are similar to the way that we might also approach art?
Okay, well, as a technician who works with artists, there is some similarity between, I think, to work with artists and to sometimes to use drugs, which is you unlearn, basically. As a technician, you have to relearn how to handle objects, how to move through the space, and how to navigate in a space and surrounded by things, when out of the orthodoxial book of any technician, which I must say that for me is at first challenging, but then it's very pleasant. So I would say that as a technician I can sum up my experience with artists and with drugs, that they suck you out in unexpected ways from the habits you are used to be out of the book, to unlearn and to relearn. This is what I can say about what I can make as a comparison between to interact both with artists and with substance. And a second thing I would like to say is basically a question. I don't know if it's normal to ask directly to the speaker, but I would like to ask David Clark, the responsible of Nothing to See Radio, because I know that he was present during a very interesting lecture in the Canadian Embassy about neurocapitalism and politics, new capitalist politics, about the ongoing hype of microdosing and nootropic consumption to boost the entrepreneurial behavior of each of us. I know that you were there, so I would like to ask you about it, and also to Annabelle as a researcher about if we are living in a tipping point of the definitive capitalist taking over of till now subcultural or habits as drug consumption, either legal and illegal.
Yeah, there was a talk at the Canadian Embassy that opened Transmedial this year, and one of the two talks that was there was about the pharmaceutical idea of kind of drug enhancements. And I think there's implicit question about, and I'm not going to do a very good job here of summarizing everything, but the idea that there are different cultures of pharmaceuticals. One has been very medicalized and is very much prescribed around medical kind of conditions about how drugs are there to control disease and so on. But there's increasingly a kind of a drug culture, I suppose, and that isn't an underground culture at all, but a culture of modification, of enhancement. And this kind of relates to cognitive ability more than to physical ability. And I guess one of the things I'm sort of feeling is that this is kind of getting into a kind of territory that we explore very much as artists. We in some ways are interested in subjective experiences. I mean, we make the claims since Kant that every aesthetic experience is an individual experience. It isn't something that everybody experiences the same. And I think what the difference between kind of psychotropic drugs and sort of medical drugs, well, we want the cancer drug to always work the same. But the experience of a kind of a cognitive drug is a very subjective experience. So in some ways, I think that drugs are being pulled into and certainly sold as subjective experiences, things that have a kind of an implicit aesthetic behind them. What would you say, Annabelle?
Well, for me, it relates to the bigger picture of what we call cognitive capitalism, which means that the labor is not only manual, and that has been for a long time, but it also has being sort of imposed on our own cognition itself. And so the logic of capital is kind of being ingrained in our own cognitive processes, meaning that, for example, we sleep, we're thinking, well, how can I sleep less and be more productive? So this kind of logic is being in us, and it becomes just only natural to think that way. So as such, the brain has become a real sought after kind of commodity itself that technology is trying to invade. So we have the Google glasses, for example, where data is being projected directly on your retina. The technology is going to reads exactly already inside your brain, and all of that is getting connected. So I think the drug culture and whether it's medicalized or not is very much kind of part of that system. Yeah.
I recently bought a VR headset, right? So the more I'm in VR, the more I feel like the real life is just not like real.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not intelligent design. I feel like we're just in a simulation. Like,
we're in a simulation.
I can't get over that feeling of like, I believe something and then it becomes real.
I was convinced for a while that I was in a simulation. It's bad acid. And like, I was like, whoosh! It was pretty, and then I was like, for a bit there, I was like, life's a simulation. But then that might have been brought on by the acid.
Like memories? Oh my god. I don't think I've ever had a memory with someone where we remember it the same way. Like, not even close. I'm always remembering things differently.
Yeah, and then who's the right one?
I'm scared of heights, not because I'm scared of heights, but more mercy because I don't want to jump off.
Yeah, anytime you get near any sort of like dangerous thing, there's always this idea of like, well, what would happen if I did it? Like, well, obviously you know what would happen, but it's the call of the void. That's the
void.
There's something connecting us. It's something called the void.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like this, the house I'm living in currently is haunted, but like undeniably haunted. It's like I don't believe in ghosts, but when you're sitting in the house by yourself, you get chills up your spine, and not because it's cold, and it feels eerie. And every single person who comes to that house is like, this house feels really odd. Yeah, and the cat. Oh my god, the cat can see them. It's constant. Like I thought the cat was blind for a while, but no, it's not blind. But it's constantly like it keeps looking at specific things. And it keeps like swiping at things that aren't there. I'm confident the cat isn't crazy. It's just kind of intense.
I'm wondering whether either of you could convince yourself that you don't exist.
Man, I think you can.
Let's work.
I think you can. But
let's try it.
Right. So, okay.
And that might make silence.
You can if you have a misapprehension of what you are, I think you can.
Oh,
right. So, like, this is another attack on dualism that was done by like some of the. I think actually Wittgenstein made a similar point, but I think it was better formulated by like some perceptual, like cognitive scientists that were interested in perception. So I think it's called Ryle's problem of regress. So if for example you're under the assumption that you are something that perceives, right?
I think therefore I am.
Right. Yeah, that's where things get tricky. Because then you can say, well, if I'm a thing that perceives, then I should be able to perceive myself. Right? So I should be able to at least be able to indicate the thing that's perceiving if I'm a thing that perceives. Right? And so then we try to do it, and then when you indicate the thing that's perceiving, then you're perceiving the thing that's perceiving. So the thing is not perceiving any longer, and so you try to do it on the second order, and you go down the I am a strange loop, Hofstadter, all that fun stuff, right?
How do you think the thinking? Yeah.
Right, and that's how you end up. I think Wittgenstein, this like halfway through the tract. No, it's near the end. It's like 5.6 or something. He says like there is no such thing as that which perceives. Right, and what he means isn't that there's no such thing as perception. It's that there isn't a thing that perceives. In other words, it's like. Just because there's thinking doesn't mean that there's a thing that's doing it. So we can't use the language of things to refer to the phenomena of consciousness.
So the question is, do you think you could convince yourself that you don't exist?
Not really thought about this before because it's quite provocative. It's kind of like negating a sort of like or in humanist view that the human is the most important thing in the world. But then I came to think that actually the one time that could happen is actually just to look at yourself in the mirror, because you're looking at a representation. And as such, a representation is always a construction. So perhaps then you could convince yourself that you don't exist.
I think we live in such a fast-paced, creative society, and it can be easy to sort of slip into a sense of mediocrity. And it's our curiosity that keeps us present. It's our desire to ask questions that keeps us present. And I think if that desire left me, it could be easy to think that I don't exist.
I guess the time that I think of is more one where your primal instincts come out and you stop thinking about what you're doing and acting consciously, but you react from a different sense, a primal instinct or something. And I imagine tumbling through the waves after being thrown off and being stuck in this situation where you're just trying to survive. And I don't know if you exist at that point.
That sounds like ghosts, which is another one of our categories, and it's something that we came up with in our discussions. And I know, Josephine, you're very interested in memory, and your work sort of reflects, I would say, some form of spectre or ghosts. What do you think of ghosts?
I guess I don't think so much about ghosts in a sense that seems too sort of concrete, but I more think about the presence of people that have touched us and how they can remain in our present even if they're gone, and remain in the work. My grandmother comes up in my work a lot, but I wouldn't think I don't know if I'd use the term ghost. It's more I guess the trace of her that comes up, and in turn makes me interested in the trace of images.
I'm going to tell you the really short version. And the boy who used to live there, she died. And I was working on this art project, and they told me to just take the furniture. My friend needed furniture, so we took the shelf into my room. I knew something was strange, and that night I had this paralysis. And then I woke up and I felt this female spirit touching me and holding me from behind, spooning me. And it was very sexual. And the next day I asked the building manager, and he said that she died. Well, when I took the shelf from her flat, I took her spirit into my flat, so I got rid of it.
And can you turn off the light? Over there, the plug, the big one.
I was in Helsinki, and I was with my ex-boyfriend. We went into this church and we sat in the confession booth, and he sat on the priest's side, and I looked at him and I saw, not with my eyes, I saw a demon behind him. Like there's this really dark energy, and I looked at him and I got chills. He looked like the devil to me, and I was like, we need to get out of here. There's some really dark shit in this room. And then we left, and that night I had this paralysis, this demon tried to enter my body, and I was paralyzed. So for me, it's always been a spirit thing. It's weird that it's...
So I'm worried about ghosts. And maybe I can ask you guys if you're worried about things that might haunt us. Because ghosts have been something that we remember. We think of them as kind of continuation of our own lives into the future, but we also have this idea of haunting. And as artists, I think we have to attune ourselves. You know, the medium is the message, and we are the mediums of some kind of spectral life. What worries you about ghosts?
I guess ghosts could be worrying because they are an essential part of darkness, and this is why there is we perceive this sort of strong dichotomy between the day and the night, and the ghost, as many other things, are part of this dark night that we are told to be afraid of. But for me, I feel that ghosts are actually sort of soothing, in a sense that they are a presence, and they could remind us about someone that we know, and on the contrary, I'm not really scared of them.
I want to ask Gustavo, who has a long history with the ZKU, are there any ghosts at the ZKU?
Some people say that there are even various artists hidden in the basement whose spirits come out from time to time. Yeah. Sometimes I have the feeling, and I believe, that each and every device and each and every machine has a ghost inside. No, well, not exactly gremlins. No, there is a classic theory that each machine has a
ghost
gremlin
in the machine.
Yeah. So sometimes my fear is that if you don't cuddle enough and if you don't pet, if you are too rude with the objects with which you have an organic relationship over time, no? So this ghost can become angry, and then you are fucked up. So I don't know if there are ghosts or not, but at least you are more. It's better for you as an habitant of a space and a building to prevent yourself and to behave as if there are ghosts in a lot of corners and in a lot of objects. No? I think it's better to believe on it. Yeah.
I think it's interesting to ask if we're worried about ghosts, because the way ghosts have been talked about just now more seems like a metaphor for how worry functions, that it can move between day and night in liminal spaces, and that it won't necessarily leave you if you want it to, and I think that's more scary, the possibility of worry, rather than what a ghost is.
So I have another question for you all. What kind of ghosts would you be?
Friendly.
I think I'll be the funny one with the sheet over the head.
A feeling.
A feeling. Siri?
Go ahead.
What kind of ghost would you be?
I'm not sure I understand.
I heard that.
Yeah, right.
Somewhere with a tree. 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 Somewhere with a tree.
So Annabelle, maybe you could sort of give us a little bit of an overview about the experiment that happened at ZKU the other night, and what were the goals, and what happened, and how does this experiment affect your thesis about sleep and non-sleep?
So we started with collective cooking exercise, where the goal was really to be together and to share sometimes skills also, but to share a meal and have an opportunity to talk through the night. So I sort of posed this this question of how could we collectively sort of experience this tension between sleep and non-sleep. And with Beyoncé, who was here today also, we sort of came together to explore this idea of occupation of the night, I suppose, and how representation can happen within an art institution, whether it's a museum or the ZKU where we were. So and part of this is really to sort of learn through experience and to bring attention to listening and how that experience can sort of attune us to our bodies, and experience something that we might not otherwise, to kind of use the time we would be sleeping for experiencing something else. So we decided on a few sort of sets, I suppose. Beyoncé started in the entrance. He chose a very acoustic space, and we laid out some mattresses and a couch, and we lie down to listen to Beyoncé's piece, which involved some screaming, which Beyoncé had been developing prior to this. And so that sparked a conversation about the voice and about the body and limitation, and so another artist decided to play a track, and so the evening was evolved in that sense, where we allowed space for artists to bringing different works, and we then decided to go downstairs and explore the basement, where we did the screaming workshop. So taking from the kind of laid back position, we decided to actually ourselves perform this screaming, which are some of the recordings you heard, and the night sort of evolved also through taking a legal drug that took us into some other spaces as well, through our mind, and how sound sort of could move us in that way. And so it was something that kept evolving, that wasn't sort of predicted. But the idea was to really test out what it means to go through the night together, because usually here in the Western world we usually spend the night. I mean, it's a quite individual exercise. So one of the premise also was to shift that for a collective experience.
Indeed. And do you think it could scale up? Do you get a sense now about how this might enter into another kind of sphere? Because we did it because we're all friends and we all try things.
Yeah, I think for me the public aspect of this project is very important, because what we did last night between us is very important to have a safe space for exploring and also artistic collaboration. But between us, it could be also called just a party, right? So for me, I'm interested in the meaning of our relationship to sleep in the broader sense, and in a public way, how this could be thought as I guess in a space more intention, because that's what we also need for kind of discourse and experience to really form.
I went to this kind of like meetup, psychedelic meetup. I think there are a lot of meetups like that.
I didn't know that these meetups even existed.
Me neither. But there is like a lot of the spontaneous groups like this. The guy who conducted the meetup yesterday, he said he just made this kind of event while he was high with the acid, So I don't know really about acid and all just like a psychedelic experiences, because I'm not a big fan of it, and also just the fact, that it doesn't turn me on, it just turn me off, Psychedelic is kind of come on.
Is it too intense?
No, it's like 60s, 260, and it's kind of out of fashion, I guess.
Is it a fashion thing, or are you?
Well, I mean, it's not a fashion.
Are you scared of what you will find, or?
It's not a fashion thing, but there's a lot of images. This kind of the white guys go to India and to try things out, and this kind of it's just kind of out of fashion.
It's not an appeal.
It's not appeal, and it's just kind of part of these images of psychedelic is based on colonization. These Western people go to the tribes in Amazon and just find their own self and stuff. Come on. Now, 21st century, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's like all those New York people who go down to South Africa and discover that they're actually white bankers.
Something like this.
I've discovered myself.
But there was
I like luxury and fresh towels.
That's about it for our presentation here today. My name's David Clark, and this is Nothing to See Here. And you have been joined in the studio by on music. Oh, sorry, I should turn on your mic. I got it. Yeah.
Young Yu from Seoul, South Korea.
Courtney Wheeler from Australia.
Josephine Mead from Australia.
From France and Australia.
Gustavo San Román Vázquez from Galicia, Spain.
Thank you very much. Just like to thank Subtext, and of course, if you wish to contribute to this kind of activity, please go to their page where they have contributions. And also thank you to ZKU for putting us all up, and of course hosting this little experiment. Thank you very much to all you Subtext people.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Hey, this is Alex Head, founder of Subtext Radio. This is Subtext. Please go ahead and click the like button and the subscribe button. It really helps us to reach new audiences and promote the artists that we work with. Hit like and hit subscribe.